Welcome to the Experience podcast, where we explore how thoughtful hospitality, meaningful products, and well crafted experiences shape the way people feel. I'm Tina Jesson, hospitality consultant, storyteller, and founder of the Experience Academy, where I work with businesses to elevate their guest journey in ways that don't just feel exceptional but drive real commercial results. And today's conversation is a fascinating one because we're stepping beyond traditional hospitality into something that sits right in the heart of experience, the humble cup of tea. I'm joined by Pat, co-founder of Nepal Tea Collective, a business that's doing more than sourcing tea. They're creating a genuine connection between origin, product, and the people who experience it. This is a story about purpose, provenance, and how something as simple as a cup of tea can bring something far more meaningful. So let's get into it. So take me back. I mean, we were just saying about, how difficult it is being an entrepreneur, and tea entrepreneurship is even harder. But take me back to the very beginning. What happened in your life
Mhm.
that, that made that idea kind of, when the idea came to you, what was going on? Why did you go, this is something I want to do?
Got it. So we are three co-founders, right? Me, Nish, Amigo. So it started with 2015 is when a massive earthquake, kind of 7.8 magnitude actually, hit Nepal. And then because of that, there was a lot of destruction that happened with like buildings and everything, right? Also, during that period is when there was a blockade in the borders between Nepal and India as well. So what happened in then during that period of time is the tea producers had already produced some massive amount of teas. However, it was they weren't able to sell it
Mm,
just because the border was closed, right? During that time frame is when we also identified a problem in Nepal, and then this is true for mostly all of these southeast tea producing regions, right? 94% of Nepali teas, 96% of Nepali teas, this is a data from a decade ago,
hmm
gets exported out to India, gets rebranded as a generic tea, and then is sold all over the world, right? This creates two distinct problems for Nepali tea industry. First, we as a origin are never able to make a name for ourselves. And then second is there are various different unwarranted middlemen in
mm,
the supply chain that add little to no value at all to the producers, right? While these middlemen, they are making millions out of it, the farmers who are actually doing some amazing work on the ground, they earn less than $2 a day, right? So that in itself is not fair, and the farmers never get a chance to get out of that vicious cycle of poverty, right? So what we wanted to do is create a company, right, that is fair, equitable, which makes tea trade equitable for the producers
hmm
as well as the consumer, right? So that is how the idea came into picture. And in 2016 is when my co-founder Nish, he registered the company and started the company with like literally $200 and a bunch of credit cards, right? That is the story. And then we got our first shipment of about 300 kilos of teas. And then the funny thing is, like, it didn't know a lot about paperworks and then the brokerage, the customs that goes into getting the tea from the airport. We're like, we'll just figure it out kind of attitude at that time. But finally, we got brokers and everything. And then we got our first shipment of 300 kilos. And then that is how we started the company. And then I was partly helping. I was still doing my bachelor's and everything. I was partly helping Nish when he had just started. And in 2020 is when I decided to leave my corporate career because I wanted to do something impactful and something related to Nepal, right? After few failed business ideas, Nish and I got into talking, and then I later in 2020 is when I joined full time as a co-founder in the company itself. Um, my background in general with tea, my family has been producing organic teas for about 44 years.
Oh, wow.
So Nish, who is my co-founder, is also my uncle. So my grandfather had 8 kids. Nish is the youngest. I am the son of the eldest daughter. So my grandfather and grandmother in the 1980s is when they started the first certified organic tea farm in Nepal. And the company started bringing teas directly from that farm. Now we have a collective of about 19 different farms that we work with.
Yes, because this is the Nepal Tea Collective, isn't it? So I had the idea that you were kind of almost like a cooperative of growers there. So what was specifically that sparked that something deeper in you? Because you're not just doing a product, are you? You've got a bit of a purpose behind it.
Mhm.
What
Yeah,
sparked that?
one of the things, if you go back to Eastern Nepal, right, where my grandfather and grandmother started their tea farm, there's a picture that we have where 40 years ago, right, there was no electricity.
Hmm.
There's no schools for the kids to study, right? There's no infrastructure for like transportation and everything. Now, 40 years later, in that exact village, there's a lot of infrastructure development. Roads are there, electricity is there. There are various different schools. Um, it's one of the most busiest hub um, in Nepal itself now, right? So I'm not saying that tea is the only thing that kind of did that. However, tea did act as a catalyst for
Mm.
social change in that village. And we as a company, we have taken a stance where we want to get 1 million farmers out of poverty within
Wow.
our lifetime
Yeah.
and within the generation that we work within the tea industry itself.
Yeah. Wow. That is quite a purpose, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. So what problem, I mean, I think you might have already touched on this, but the question
Mhm.
that kind of came to mind is what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Because when we, as entrepreneurs, we kind of
Mhm.
go into business and we're always told that if we can identify the problem and then offer the solution, it makes life a lot easier. So what was the
Mhm.
problem that you were trying to solve for both the producer and for the customer?
Yeah, very good question. I think on the producer part, I already touched a little bit on it, right? Where we are doing two different things, where one is going to be creating an identity for Nepali tea industry in general, right? Where Nepal has been producing teas for about 60, 70 years now. However, we haven't been able to create that origin identity for Nepal. So that is one of the major things that we are trying to do, where we are educating consumers
Hmm.
as well as a lot of different tea shop owners, tea businesses all over the world about Nepali teas in general.
Hmm.
That's one, right?
Hmm.
Second one is tea farmers are super old, right?
Right.
Tea
Yeah.
pluckers in general, right? And then this is true for all of the tea producing regions all over the world, right? Now, if we don't make the tea industry lucrative enough for the producers, there aren't going to be young tea makers
Yeah.
or young farmers who want to get into the industry, right? And yes, automation can solve the problem partly. However, if you take a look at various different origins like Nepal, right, machines are not possible up in the mountains,
No.
right? It has to be hand plucked,
Mm.
right? So we want to create this identity. At the same time, we want to make the industry lucrative enough for the producers so that a lot of young people can get into it. That's on the producer front, right? And then that is the only way we can get the farmers out of poverty, right?
Yeah.
On the consumer side, right, there are few different problems as well. Consumers these days are trying to know where their teas, where their coffee, where their
Yeah.
any product that they consume, where is it coming in from,
Yeah.
right? So traceability and transparency is super important these days for all of the consumers, for most of the consumers, right? However, the tea industry hasn't done a good job in terms of providing that information to consumers. So, what we do is all of our retail packages, we have a QR code on the back of the packaging.
Hmm.
When you scan it, you can actually see the journey of the teas from the day it was plucked to the day it reaches your cup, right? You can see the dates, the tea leaves were plucked, the elevation, which farm, and then the faces of the farmer as well, so that there's that connection
Mm.
between the producers and the ultimate consumers.
Yeah.
And then you can actually tip your farmer directly from that as well,
Oh,
right?
really? Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I had no idea. I've never heard that being done before. So
Yeah,
great,
we have
great
been
job
doing it
there.
since 2016, and then a lot of these days, when we take a look at it, a lot of coffee company are doing it, a lot of tea companies are doing it
Yeah.
as well. And then another part is consumers, right? When you think about the tea supply chain, there are the tea farmers, right? Then it goes into the production house,
Mm.
tea gets processed, several middlemen, right? Then distributors, then wholesalers,
Yes.
then it reaches to tea businesses like ours. Then it goes into consumers' hand, right? So the teas that you are consuming is not fresh, right?
No.
That is the reason why we wanted to show that traceability and transparency in the supply chain. So we are trying to bring in the freshest plucked teas directly from the garden without any middleman directly to the consumer side, right? So we have three different business vertical. One is going to be the direct to consumer arm of things,
Hmm.
where a consumer get the freshest teas directly from Nepal itself, right? And all the value addition, the packaging is done at the farm level.
Yeah.
So you are getting the freshest of the freshest batch possible, right? On the wholesaler side as well, right? Folks have been buying Nepali teas without knowing that they are buying Nepali teas, right? So we are creating that origin identity when folks are buying it. And then one of the other things that we I've realized is a lot of people who have been involved in the tea industry really never have had a chance to touch tea plants,
Yeah.
right? Tea
Yeah.
bushes, right? That's majority of like folks in the tea industry that haven't had that opportunity to connect with the producers on the ground. So what we also do is we do tea tours where we take you back to our family farm, and then for 10 days you are learning the art and science of tea making, as well as taking a look at Nepal through the lens of tea. And then it's one of a kind experience that we provide to all of our customers as well as our tea buyers.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I really love that because you're really making that connection. And I think connection is just so, so important. You're not just selling tea, are you? You're basically telling that story.
Mhm.
Um, What's the part of that story that you want your customers to understand the most, if you like? Because obviously there's quite a lot in there. What's if you like, the takeaway? What makes, yeah, what is that kind of hook in that story that you want your customers to really understand?
Through the tea tours, I think one of the things us as a consumer in general, we
Hmm.
take things for granted, right? Um, we never, there's a niche segment of customers that really want to identify where everything is coming in from, but
Yeah.
there's a huge segment of a market where we take everything for granted, right? Um, the consumers, it's such an interesting aspect that we are trying to show through the tea tours is basically, hey, you are on the ground, you are actually going to see the reality of things that happens on the origin, right? How difficult it is, how
Yeah.
laborsome it is, right? And then what it does is actually gives a different perspective for consumers as well to
Mm.
understand um, the process of tea making, as well as why the prices for specialty tea are a bit higher than commodity grade teas,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
think that is the perspective that we are trying to show
Yeah.
via the tea tours, is give you a perspective of what actually happens on the
Yeah.
ground.
It's a bit like when you go to see a piece of china being made and the fact that it's touched, 17 times and it takes 3 weeks to go from a piece of clay to a teacup. It's having that appreciation of complexity and the value that you're actually building into the product at the end of the day. So I think yeah,
Exactly.
that's
And
really,
then one of the things that we do during the tours is we actually, it's a very immersive
mm,
tours that we do where you are actually in the garden plucking the teas alongside our producers and you are making your own teas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Our producers, they pluck about 30 to 40 kilos of tea like in like a 8 hour shift.
Yeah.
However, when we are doing it, we pluck about like 500 grams,
Yes.
right? So there's that huge distinction between the labor that goes into
Yeah.
making all of those teas. And then we really want to show people that so that every cup of tea that they drink, they appreciate it.
That's right. And this is really immersive experience as well, isn't it? That's something I talk about quite a lot is how to kind of elevate experience. And that is really, well, like you say, it's from leaf to cup, all in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how important is that transparency, would you say, and that fact that you are doing direct trade in
Mhm.
everything that you do? And I suppose the key question there is, how are your customers responding to that? Because it's one thing to kind of, have this idea and this ideal of how you want your story to land, but
Mhm.
what are customers actually coming back to you and saying about that? Would you say?
Yeah, so it was such an interesting question that you asked. So firstly, let's take US as a market, right?
Mhm.
Almost 80% of tea consumed in the US is going to be RTDs, right? Then there's that 20% segment where it's loose leaf or tea bags.
Yeah.
Then almost most of the majority of the people are drinking tea bags in general as well,
Mhm.
right? Now we have a small segment of specialty loose leaf tea market, right? And within that market, I think what I have seen is folks who really love loose leaf teas don't just drink it for caffeine side of things,
Mm.
but there's a sentiment behind it as well,
Mm.
right? So that customer base really wants to know the origin,
Mm.
really wants to know the producer behind those teas, and then they want to know the story behind the tea itself. So, in the QR code that we have, almost 30% of the consumers who buy from us actually scan the QR code and then actually take a look at the storytelling side of things that we do via the QR code, right? So, there's that customer base. And then we take about 30 to 40 folks every year to Nepal for the tea tour side of things as well. So there's that customer base who really wants to understand
Yeah.
uh, the traceability, the transparency side of
Yeah.
things. And then I think in general, the industry is headed towards that direction where it's a business. People just don't buy it for the sake of it. They really want to understand
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
what they are buying or
Yeah.
what they are putting in their body,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's trending towards that.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, what kind of feedback are you having, say, let's say for those people on the tour, what kind of feedback are you getting there? And also, are they trying to experience the tea rather than just consuming it? Because that is quite a different thing, isn't it? And I think that's a wonderful thing about tea, that it is, somewhere where you can, it's by the sip, not the gulp. You can relax, you kind of breathe into it.
Mhm.
And it's much more than just refreshment or, uh, um, yeah, j just drinking some liquid. It's much more than that. It's more of a calming
Mhm.
experience altogether. So what kind of comments have you had? What kind of feedback are you getting?
Yeah, one of the things that a lot of people tell us, be it like direct to consumer side of things or like our wholesale buyers,
Mm.
is the freshness of the teas that are coming in,
And
right?
they can tell the difference in that.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. You can actually, if a tea is has been stale for about like a tea never expires, right?
Mm.
However, the only thing that happens is it will lose its aroma, the flavor profile, and everything, right? So the teas that they are sourcing from us or buying from us, one of the first thing that we receive as a feedback is the quality and the freshness of the teas itself, right? Another is it's a mind-blowing thing for folks to know that Nepal actually produces teas, right? We are in such a interesting we are geographically located in such an interesting way where India and China is what sandwiches us,
Yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
these are the two
yeah, the
most
big ones.
big tea producers, right? So Nepal has always been overshadowed by that, right? So the first, when we talk to people about Nepali teas in general, they like there's that educational piece
Yeah,
to it, and when they really know that, oh wow, Nepal produces teas, and then they try it, the
yeah,
quality really impresses
yeah,
them, right? Another thing, I think, in terms of like the experiences that we provide, folks are very appreciative of it. And then the experience, interesting thing about these kind of experiences is like everybody will have a different experience even within the same group, right?
yes.
Because the thing that touches them the most, it's very subjective, right? So let me give you an example of so this was back in 2018-ish, if I remember this correctly, when we did like a group of, it was a group of four that went to Nepal, right? One of the member in that team was a chef from Napa Valley, right?
Okay.
She has been a tea consumer for a long period of time, however, never had a chance to visit the origin. So this was her first trip.
Mm,
We had three other folks who were in the tea industry and then they really wanted to learn the art and science of tea making. Um, the chef, Tracy, she was not really into like the nitty-gritty side of
yeah,
things, right? So while others were doing the tastings and everything, Tracy was just roaming around the tea gardens and everything. And then we designed the tours in such a way that it feels like you are at home, right? There's no restrictions in things that you can do. It's like you are there for like 10 days. You are going to enjoy the tea
right.
garden as it was your home, right? So everybody, we were in the factory side of things, and then Tracy was just roaming around. And then when we come back to come back from the factory, we could not find Tracy anywhere, right? So we're like searching for her everywhere. And then what we saw is Tracy was actually sitting on the ground with our cook, Pushpa, right? And then she was making bread for like the entire group, right? And when she left, Tracy actually handed her bangles
Hmm.
to Pushpa, and Pushpa actually gave Tracy her clip. And these two people, Tracy does not speak Nepali, Pushpa does not speak English, and then they were just communicating through love, right?
Oh my
And then
goodness.
that experience was so beautiful,
Yeah.
right? And then
I've got
Tracy
goosebumps.
actually Tracy actually funds some of the kitchens out in Nepal right now, right? So she went for a tea tour, but
Yeah.
she found purpose in a very different way. So
Yeah.
the experience of these tours are going to be different for different
Yeah.
people, right? And then for folks who are in the industry, I think once they are there, they realize the opportunity that Nepal has in terms of the tea production side of things,
Mm.
and the since we are sandwiched between these two huge tea producing countries, right? They really get to see what is the potential,
Mm.
and then the varieties of teas Nepal is producing, and then the young tea makers who are getting involved in the tea industry and experimenting with a lot of different kinds of teas.
Wow, wow, that's a very exciting time then, really, isn't it? And I think today's customers, I think you're quite right that they're not just buying products, they're buying into things like values, they're buying into the ethics, they're buying into the meaning, and they're looking for that deeper connection. And I think that's expressed it very, very well. What do you think the wider hospitality industry could learn from the way tea is grown, sourced, and experienced, would you say?
Mm. I think on the hospitality side of things, what I think is the tea industry in general,
Mm,
right? We haven't done a good job in making tea accessible or
mm,
making tea sexy enough for
mm,
our customers, right?
mm.
The reason I say this is if you take a look at the coffee industry, if you take a look at
Mm.
the beer industry, right?
Yeah.
The reason specialty and artisanal coffee and beer has been on the rise is because of a few different reasons, right? There's that instant gratification factor in both coffee as well as beers, right? Beer, you get the buzz, coffee, you get the caffeine kick right away,
Mm.
right? Then there's this factor of the social side of things, right? It is embedded on us that if we are going for a meeting, it's like for a cup of with a cup of coffee. If
Hmm.
we are going into like for games, beers and everything,
Mm.
right? And the other thing is the experience that the coffee industry as well as beer industry is able to provide with microbreweries all over.
Mm.
Like these days, microbreweries are like popping up left and right.
Everywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
People can go in there, experience that theater that the
Mm.
beer and coffee industry can create, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Also, the roasting process in coffee happens in the place that you are selling your coffee beans,
Yeah.
right? With tea, it's different because the production happens in the origin, which is like miles and miles away,
Yeah.
right? So people do not connect with that,
Mm.
right? So it is upon us, the folks in the industry, tea shops, tea companies, to provide that experience
Yes.
to people when they come in to buy teas, right? That can be done in various different ways. One is tea bars,
Mm.
right? I think we need to create a place where folks can come in and see tea in a very different way, right?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
operate around like 10 tea bars in Nepal and one in the US, right? Where we are serving teas in a very interesting way, where there's a cold brew white tea that we serve. We serve it in a champagne glass. We call it a white champagne, right?
Right. Yeah.
the the time when we hand that champagne flute to the customer, there's that wow factor,
Yeah.
right? In the hospitality side of things, right? I think one of the things that we as an industry need to learn from coffee and beer is we need to create that theater in tea,
I
right?
think you're absolutely right, and I think this is something that, as a tea room owner in America, I was able to do because there were people that would hunt out tea rooms because they liked the experience of the tea room, and good tea was is hard to come by in America, as you well know.
Mhm.
In the UK, it's quite different because, tea is our national drink. We drink
Mhm.
probably more tea in England than I think Ireland is the only other country that drinks more tea than us. But we drink what we call everyday tea, which is in a
Mhm.
bag and it's not specialist. And to
Mhm.
open a tea room, I mean, I was at a cafe not long ago and there were specialty coffees, but then there was just tea and some peppermint tea. There's like three teas and it was in a bag in a pot and it was just kind of it was awful. And it's just a very different cultural thing. And I think there is a part of that cultural shift that's going to be necessary to make that work. But I'm delighted to hear that you're making some strides there with this
Yeah.
idea of the tea bar.
And then one of the interesting thing is like we have so many different varieties of teas, right?
Yes.
Herbs, botanicals, and everything, right?
Yeah.
There is a very interesting way that we can present tea, right?
Mm.
That is something that hasn't been done. Why
Yes.
do we only have flights of beers? We do flights of tea, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Where we like provide people with like white tea, black tea, green tea, and oolong so that
Yeah.
they can actually see the difference
That's
in
it.
the color, in the taste, right? So we need to create that theater over and over again so that people can indulge with it,
That's
right?
right.
And then one of the interesting things is matcha these days, right?
Mm.
The reason the rise of matcha has been so substantial is because of a few different things. First, there's that Instagrammable,
Mm.
the green color. It's super Instagrammable, right? There's that instant gratification factor of it gives you that kick, but it goes down gradually, so there's no jitters and everything.
Yeah.
The matcha industry has been able to like educate folks in that regards as well. Next is the theater when you are like
Yes.
whisking it in the bowl. People are actually taking a look at like the effort that the baristas or like the tea baristas are doing, and then you are pouring it. that is the theater that everybody
Yeah.
is looking for.
Yeah.
Because these days, people just don't buy for the sake of consuming. They want that experience when they are
Experience.
buying it.
Absolutely. You're speaking my language, you really are. If a cafe or tea room or a farm shop or a hotel even wanted to elevate their tea offering, what's the one thing that you think they're probably getting wrong, would you say?
Hmm. I think when you are thinking about elevating, right? I don't think it will be elevated if you are using tea bags.
Nope.
That's just me, right?
No, I agree
That's
with you
just me.
100%.
I think it has to be loose leaf teas,
Mm.
right? And then there has to be a story of the tea when you are serving it, right? I recently went to San Diego, and then I went to a coffee shop, and then I got a pour over, right? When they served it to me, there was a small note card that said the origin, that
Oh,
said the flavor profiles, give me information about which farm it was coming in from. They charged me $10. I was fine with it because the experience was there,
yes.
the information was there, right? And then that really captivated me, right?
That's so interesting you say that, especially about the price point, because my belief is that if you can offer an experience, you can charge a lot more, and it doesn't necessarily cost you much more to offer that experience. And that's really where I want to sort of see things going. So I'm so pleased you said that.
Exactly. And then I never say that like convenience, if people want convenience, there's always going to be that tea
Yeah,
bags, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then that's completely fine.
yeah.
But if you're thinking about elevating the scene, it has to be loose leaf and then it has to be done in such a way that folks can indulge with it.
Mm.
There has to be that interaction, not just consumption, but there has to be that interaction before they're consuming the cup of tea.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What's next for the Nepal Tea Collective? What have you got planned coming up? Is there any juicy things you can tell us about?
Um, what we have done, so we have the three verticals, right? And the direct to consumer arm, the wholesale business, and a tea as a service. This year is when we are like really honing towards tea as a service. So we have three tea bars in Nepal that's under construction. We
Wow,
just acquired a cafe and converted into a tea bar in the US as well. So it's just been like 2 months. And
wow.
then we are trying to see if the model works where, yes, there's going to be the there's a lot of education that goes behind educating people about teas and
Sure.
everything.
Yeah,
However, if that model works, we really want to have various different locations in various different states within the US,
yeah.
um, for so that we can uplift the way tea has been like seen, right? Juiciest thing is going to be some of the teas that we are producing.
Mm.
There's a producer named Sarad, in eastern part of Nepal who just got a tea cake machine. So he will soon be producing tea cakes, and we are super excited to bring that along. In like August, September, we are launching few other various different lines of our wellness blends as well, right? So now we work with about 19 farms, and then it's just not tea farms. Now it's like herbs and botanical farms as well.
Lovely. Yeah, so you can do more
So,
blends and
yeah.
yeah,
So, since the industry is headed towards the wellness side as well,
yeah.
we really want to create functional tea blends
Mm.
that do good as well as make you feel good,
Good.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ginger, we are working with like some of the ingredients that's produced out in Nepal is like ginger, turmeric, black cardamom, lemongrass, and when people see that, they are amused that, oh, Nepal produces these things as well, right? So
Yeah,
we are bringing in a lot of different varieties. And another interesting thing that we are doing is basically we host Northeast Tea Festival itself in Boston, right?
yep.
Where we really want to create a community of tea lovers in the Northeast area so that they can enjoy they can see the varieties of teas that are being produced in different parts of the world. So
Mm.
it's a platform for us to bring in producers from all over the world, and then just have them connect with like the consumers and then enjoy some good
Oh,
teas.
that'd be wonderful. When is that taking place? Have you got dates yet?
August 22nd.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so we
Uh,
did the first Northeast Tea Festival last year,
uh-huh.
right? And then it was a huge success.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Fire Marshal came in because it was that crowded, right? And then we have learned from all the mistakes that we did in the first iteration. And then now the second edition of Northeast Tea Festival will be done in like Boston itself again. Um, and we are super excited.
And it's a great place, isn't it? Boston Tea Party and all that.
Exactly.
So
It has
finally,
a history to it.
it
Yeah.
does indeed. So finally, if someone hasn't tried your teas before, where should they start and where can they find you?
Yes, so www.nepalteacollective.com, right? That's where you can find all of our amazing teas coming out of Nepal. If you want to personally reach out to me regarding wholesale side of things, you can find me on LinkedIn or email me at prijal at Nepal Tea Collective.
I'll put some deets in the in these show notes so that people can get to you, and I'll
Yeah,
be posting this into our Tea Room Secrets group and up on my Experience Academy website as well. So
got it.
looking at trying to bring more experience into hospitality industry in general. What I love about this conversation is how it reminds us that great hospitality isn't always about grand gestures. It's often about connection, intention, and stories we invite our guests into. Whether that's a country hotel, a cafe tea room, a farm shop, or even as something as a simple cup of tea. And for me, that's what sits in the heart of everything I do in the Experience Academy, helping businesses to create experiences that people don't just enjoy in the moment, but remember, return to, and talk about. A huge thank you to Pat from Nepal Tea Collective for sharing not just the product, but the purpose behind it. I hope you agree with me. It was an amazing story. If you've enjoyed this episode, do take a moment to follow and share with somebody who cares about great experiences and explore more conversations like this. And if you're a hospitality business looking to elevate your guest experience, then you know where to find me at theexperienceacademy.com. Until next time, bye for now.